Hello and welcome to the Ratio Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Ray, and as always, we're coming to you from beautiful downtown Athens, Georgia. Tonight on the show, we have Miss Adrienne Barbeau, just a guest we've wanted since the inception of this here podcast. And I couldn't be more delighted to have that chat coming to you here in just a few. We got BP Helium recording with us tonight, and it's a delight to have him back on the podcast. But, like so many others, I got into Adrienne's work through Swamp Thing, The Fog, so many iconic horror roles. And that's just the tip of the iceberg on what she's involved in. So let's get to that right now and get to our chat with the delightful Adrienne Barbeau. Hello, everybody. Today, I am thrilled and honored to have a long-time wanted guest on this show. And today, we have just the iconic Adrienne Barbeau on the show today. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Johnny.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. And I just want to jump right in. You've had such, an illustrious career. I mean, we could be here all night, but I want to start with you. You got your start on Broadway in Fiddler on the Roof, which leads us to Grease. How much did appearing in Grease change your life?
Well, completely, really, because I was nominated for a Tony Award, and Norman Lear and his casting people saw the show or read about it or read about me or whatever. And so they called me in the initial interview was with Norman to play B. Arthur's daughter in Maude.
Amazing.
And at the time, they had already introduced another actress who was playing that part, the part of Carol. But for some other reason, maybe she didn't want to move to LA or whatever it was, they were going to have to find someone else. But her character had been established as having a 7-year-old son. And so when I first met with Norman, he didn't think I looked old enough to have a 7-year-old son. So I went right back to the Broadway to Grease, and I was working away. And then a month later, they called me from LA and said they wanted me to come out and audition, and they hired me. And so had it not been for Grease, in that way, it affected my entire career. It led to Maude, which then led to everything else. But Grease also led to enduring very, very close friendships. The cast of Grease, several of whom unfortunately have passed away just this last year, but we were all the closest of friends, and that has, stayed with us.
Right.
You're 52 years now.
That's amazing.
So it had an enormous impact on my life, both emotionally and career-wise.
Well, working with Norman Lear and coming to Maude, I mean, what an amazing show. At this point, you're new to the TV game. So what was it like to be working with a legend like B. Arthur?
I sort of took, well, there's two parts to the answer of that story. First of all, I showed up and I thought, oh my gosh, everyone is more talented than I am. Everyone is more, has more experience than I am. Everyone knows what they're doing. I'd never done television. I'd never even watched television. I was a stage actress, from the time I was 15. So I worked at night. I was always on stage at night. I never saw TV, maybe a couple of morning talk shows or something. So that was a real learning experience. And the other part of it is, and I didn't realize this until Maude had finished and I went on to do other television shows. I didn't realize how incredibly fortunate we all were to be working with Bea, because she was the penultimate professional. she was so giving and so loving. And I just took it for granted that, everybody was, had this wonderful television experience that I did, where it was a joy to go to work every day. And they were my family. And there were no egos, and there was no, Hollywood BS or anything like that. B was fantastic, not just as an actor or comedian. She was just a wonderful person to be working with.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there seems like there's so many characters on that show, and Bill Macy. What a character. What was he like?
Bill was a character right from the start. Bill was Bill was just, the one thing about Bill is he was just naturally funny without thinking about it. He could deliver the comedy. If he sat down and started to break it down, it was like, no, Bill, that's not why it's funny. Don't even question it. Just do it the way you do it, and it'll be great.
Well, and going back to B, she had such great comedic chops, but she had great dramatic chops. So I imagine it was just such a great learning environment each day.
It was. It was. I learned so much from her. I mean, because we all came from the theater. So we were all extremely professional. And, I mean, everybody showed up on time, and they knew their lines, and they knew how to take direction, and they didn't go wandering off at 2:30 in the afternoon and not come back or anything like that, which has happened in other instances in other shows.
Right, right.
But she set the tone. And when I say she was giving, she was the first one who would say, I think this joke would work better if Adie said it, or if Conrad said it. She had, I mean, sure, she must have had an ego, but it was about the quality of the show and what would make the show the best,
Right.
not what she needed as the star.
Right, right. Conrad. Yeah, there's just so many people on that show that are so amazing, including yourself.
Conrad was like my father. He was my mentor. I mean, I went to Connie for everything. He told me which car to buy when I first got to LA. And when I bought my first house, I called him up and said, could you come over? Because I think I made a terrible mistake.
That's so great. And, a decade later, he becomes like America's dad, kind of on different strokes. So,
yes. Yeah.
So many, and, there's so many actors of stature, from that era that I see on game shows of the time, early in TV. And I saw your run on Match Game. They seated you right next to Richard Dawson. So what are some of your memories of Gene Rayburn in that cast? Was it as wild as some of the rumors say?
I'm sorry to say, I don't remember Match Game. I remember $20,000 Pyramid.
Oh, because, yeah.
And I remember a show called Tattletales because I was there with my boyfriend. And I did the pilot. I didn't remember this, but Joanne Worley just reminded me a couple of weeks ago. I did the pilot for the Gong Show, which I don't have any remembrance of what that thing was about.
Right. And then that becomes a phenomenon, right out of the gate.
Yeah. But Match Game, I don't even remember how to play it. But, in those days, in the 70s, I guess it was mostly the 70s, maybe into the 80s, game shows were what reality shows are now.
Right.
And that's where we all went on our weekends.
Right. A lot of people. Yeah, I saw where they taped a lot of these things on the weekends, like 6 shows a day or something.
Yes. Yeah. Used to fly to New York to do Pyramid. Used to fly to New York, had a wonderful time, and do. I think Pyramid we did 5 shows, a day because I had to take 5 different changes of clothes.
Right.
And, just spent the day and then flew back the next day and went back to work on Maude.
You know that '70s TV era. I've watched a couple of your appearances on the Johnny Carson show, and it's almost hard to tell people, the importance of the Carson show at that time cannot be overstated. And how much was it a thrill to interact with him and appear on that show?
It wasn't. It was I don't want to say it was an honor. It wasn't a thrill because there was a lot riding on it. There was a lot of nervousness or anxiety about doing Johnny's show. Mike Douglas, on the other hand, or Merv Griffin, were great fun to do because, Merv, you just sat there and gossiped and had a good time. And Mike Douglas was such a love. But with Johnny, it was more like, oh gosh, I got to come through here,
Yeah.
You gotta score somehow.
Yeah.
Either make Johnny, set Johnny up to get the laughs, or get the laughs yourself. It wasn't quite as relaxed an atmosphere, I guess I should say.
Well, in the '70s, TV movies were such a big deal. It was really in an event, and you were in some very notable ones. I want to talk about one just very briefly that'll lead us into Someone's Watching Me. But first, I want to talk about you were in Crash in 1978 with William Shatner. What was it like working with Mr. Shatner?
I don't remember it well. I have a feeling that was the show where the what's his name, the prop master thought he was doing us a favor, and instead of giving us grape juice to substitute for wine on the plane, he gave us actual wine. And I think it may have been Bill who was not happy about that.
I can imagine.
But the more I think about it, the more I remember. It was Sharon Gless and myself, and the plane. It was based on a true story, I think, about a plane that went down in the Everglades, and it was cold and muddy and rainy, and it was. I think it was the first director I had ever worked with who used foul language on the set and was screaming at everybody. And I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Oh, wow.
But in that, I don't remember.
Well, you're also in 1978. You're in Someone's Watching Me, in which you meet John Carpenter, who directed that picture.
Yes.
Which leads us to The Fog. And how daunting was this project, and I'm talking about The Fog, that you're alone for most of this film? A very demanding role. What are some of your memories coming into that?
Well, we had a fantastic time shooting The Fog, and never did it cross my mind then or now when you use the word daunting. It never had no. I had the blessing of John having written the role for me. So it was just, and we were shooting in what I think is the most beautiful part of the country ever. So much so that when we finished the film, John and I bought a house up there. But I think that Point Reyes and Inverness are as much an important character in the film as we all were. But I never thought about, I'm just working by myself. It didn't feel like that. I had the microphone. I was talking to my audience,
Right.
The only difficult scene, I wouldn't say it was the most difficult scene in the movie, but it was difficult from a performing standpoint, not an acting standpoint necessarily, was the scene on the lighthouse where I'm being pursued by the ghost.
Yes.
And, I'm surrounded by fog, and the ghost is chasing me up the top of the lighthouse. And then something happens, Deus ex machina, off screen in another scene. And that causes the fog to disappear and the ghost to disappear. Well, in 1979, when we made the movie, we didn't have CGI. And I've told this story many times, and I even talk about it in my memoir. We didn't have any way. We had blowers that could push the fog juice into the scene, but we didn't have any way to get the fog out of the scene.
Right.
So John said, "Okay, look, we have to act this scene in reverse. We have to start with you with no fog around you, being relieved and in consternation over the fact that the ghost has disappeared, but your life has been saved. And then we have to proceed to you going down the lighthouse and being engulfed in the fog or something. I don't know. Anyway, I had to act it in reverse. And then when they printed the film, the negative, I guess they turned it upside down or they flipped it over or something. They printed it in reverse. And all John said to me was, the only thing you have to remember is don't blink, because if you blink on camera when we flip the negative or whatever it is they do, it's going to look weird. So that was.
That's a great thing to hear right when you're about to start. Well, how many takes was it going up and down the stairs to the stage or to the lake? I mean, that's amazing.
Well, I think I've read there were 345 stairs. And I mean, it wasn't easy on me. I was in high heel, platform boots, but it was really hard on the camera people, the camera crew, because they had to carry that camera on their shoulder as we're walking down the stairs. And the Point Reyes Lighthouse is part of the Point Reyes National Seashore, controlled by the National Forest Rangers, Park Rangers.
Right.
And if the wind got, I think it was over 45 knots or something, 45 miles, they shut us down. They wouldn't let us even walk down the stairs. So we had a couple of days there where, show up to work and oops, can't do that scene.
Right. And then, you mentioned the beauty of that those shots of you coming up in the Jeep before,
Yes.
just breathtaking. I can see why you bought a house up there.
And it still looks like that. It's a beautiful part of the country. It's only 26 miles from the Golden Gate Bridge. So anybody that's, visiting San Francisco, it's well worth the drive.
Make it a day and get you some pictures on the fog locations. Yeah. Well, the first movie I remember seeing you in was the Cannonball Run from 1981. You taught me about civil disobedience, like at an early age, But what was Burt Reynolds like and the rest of that star-studded cast? That looks like y'all were having a good time on that.
Well, I think you should read my book.
I will direct everybody to your wonderful memoir. We're not going to give you everything here, people.
But I'll give you. Well, I knew Burt. Burt and I had dated. I don't know when, in the mid 70s,
right?
And had managed to remain friends, and so I knew Burt and I knew Dom and I knew Jerry Reed and Sammy Davis and I had done not match game, Tattletales together, and he had cheated, so I knew Sammy. The one that I was starstruck over was Roger Moore.
Oh,
I mean, I
wow.
was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what am I going to talk to Roger Moore about? I was, um,
Was he
it,
super charming in person?
he was lovely. And wouldn't you know, we were in the middle of the desert and his air conditioning went out in his trailer. And so he asked if he could come sit in mine. And I was like, oh my God, what are we going to talk about?
Well,
I think we talked about the state of the educational system in California.
I bet you he was well versed in it,
I
and
think he probably was.
yeah,
The
yeah.
other thing about Roger is I believe, I mean, I remember him wearing a white suit. And we were in the middle of Lancaster in the desert or, somewhere. And there was never a speck of dust on that suit. He
Right.
was impeccable. Um,
Well,
as, as for making the movie, I may not have had the same experience that everybody else had, but um, we had a couple of real tragedies on that film, stunt people being, well, paralyzed from the neck down and things like that.
right.
Uh, but it was great fun working with Dom. Certainly, Dom was he's fantastic. And Dean Martin. And
Just a legend. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
amazing. Well, I want to get into Creep Show, and you worked with George Romero on this film. And you also, this is your second film you're in with Hal Holbrook. I don't think you guys have any scenes in The Fog, but in this one, you play his wife Wilma. And
Yes,
what was it like working with Hal?
Hal was great. Both guys were great.
Fritz Weaver?
Fritz,
Yeah.
Fritz Weaver, yeah, they were fantastic. We had a good time. That was a really fun shoot.
Well, what was Romero like to work with? Was he real easygoing and fun?
Yes, yes.
Well,
I love George. I love him. I often said to him, I did a second film for him, Two Evil Eyes, that
yes, yes.
I often said, I would go anywhere, anytime for no money just to work with George, just to be with George. I loved him dearly.
That's such a delight to hear. I mean, and I know you had been in horror films before. How shocking was the gore and the violence to you when you actually saw it, or saw the script and was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to get my head blown off in one part."
It wasn't that when I first read the script, um, I wasn't going to do it, not because of the violence, but I think it was just the I just thought it was, ooh, this is, maybe it was the gore. I don't remember, but I remember thinking, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to. And Tom Atkins had already been signed, and Tom is one of my closest friends. And I called Tommy and I said, Tom, you're doing this movie, this creep show thing. He said, oh, Adie, you don't get it. You don't understand. It's going to be a comic book. It's very stylized. It's going to be very funny. Just do it. And of course, I was married to John at the time, and John is saying, you're going to turn down an opportunity to work with George Romero? Are you nuts? Okay,
Right.
all right, I'll do it. All right. And I don't drink. I've never drunk, so I've never been drunk. I don't know what that's like. And I sort of just went to Pittsburgh and put myself in George's hands. And it was one of those experiences where, as an actor, you're usually working sort of small because the camera makes everything really big on screen, right?
Right.
George was like, no, you can go bigger. You can go bigger. I thought, oh my God, what, they're going to think I'm chewing the scenery. But it worked.
Oh, it totally works, and I think you just nail it in so many ways. You're just your eyes stay on you when you're on the screen, and you're there with just such great actors, and it's just really a fun role. That it's. I always say like horror films of the '80s, they're like cartoons almost in a way. There's nothing in it. It would scare you a little bit, but it was always just a fun ride, you know. And for somebody, I know I've seen you mention that you never watched horror films. You didn't think you would be in many horror films. We go right on to Swamp Thing, which is such a beautiful movie. And you're working with a budget constrained Wes Craven.
Yes.
And what are some of your strongest recollections of this shoot? I know you shot in my home state of South Carolina.
Right. We shot at Cypress Gardens and Magnolia Gardens, I think it was called, outside of Charleston. Um, it was not an easy shoot. It was because, as you say, they kept pulling the budget out from under Wes, and he was having to make constant changes to the script and eliminate characters. And we showed up on the set one day and there was no makeup trailer because they hadn't paid the rent for it, and a lot of drugs on the set, and several crew members going to jail, if I remember correctly. It was not an easy shoot. And Charleston I think we were there in April and May. It was hot and muggy and
Oh, yeah.
chiggers, ticks, and I didn't worry about alligators because I just didn't have that kind of imagination. But the guys thought it was great fun to throw snakes over me, and it was just long hours, and the fact that it turned out as successfully as it did, and so many people love it, was a real tribute to Wes, because I'm not so sure there are many people who could have pulled it off like he did and made it work.
Right, right. Well, later in the '80s, you start voicing Catwoman. I'm going to get a lot of
Yes.
crap for that.
Yeah.
Catwoman on the Batman the animated series, just possibly the greatest animated series I would say of all time. Which gets you into voice acting. Did you enjoy doing that role?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, voice acting is so much fun. It really is. And you don't have to get made up, and you don't have to worry about what your hair looks like, and you don't have to worry about the costume, and that's all fun too. Up until I did Batman, I had done a lot of books on tape and a couple of commercials and other cartoons and things, but just guest stars or individual things. I think I didn't even know what this was. I think the first animated film I did was Ultraman.
Right, right.
If anybody knows Ultraman, and a whole bunch of other things, but Batman the animated series was the first series that I ever did, and it was just a pleasure to go to work every day and work with Kevin, who's so incredibly talented,
So amazing.
and everyone.
And well, did you this gets you into so many avenues. You're a very iconic voice in several video games. Did you ever see that for yourself in the parade of life?
Well, when I started out, they didn't have video games. They didn't even have VHS. I mean,
Right on, right on. Well,
no. No, in fact, the first video game I ever did was Batman Arkham Asylum, I think, and I didn't even know
yes.
what it was. So much so that I never paid attention, and I never even, years later, people said, "Well, what have you done?" And I thought, "Oh, well, what was that one? I don't. What was that one?" I have since come to realize that the ones that I have done have been very successful. I was the overseer in Fallout 76.
Yes, yes.
And Hera in God of War, and another character in God of War 3. I can't remember the name, and Mad Max and Halo 4. And they're fun to do. Um, And what I've just been doing recently, which I had never done before, I've just gone in and dubbed a couple of movies that were, made in a different language.
Yeah.
But the studio has purchased them and they want to release them with English speaking actors. And that's quite fun too.
That sounds like just playing at work, I mean, that's amazing.
It's yeah. I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in my life, honestly. What I do, my day job is doing video captioning for the blind. I narrate TV shows and movies. I describe what's going on screen in between the actors' dialogue.
Right.
So that if you're watching your TV and you put the SAP channel on, and it happens to be one of the shows that I've done, you'll hear my voice saying, "He turns to her with a furrowed brow," or something.
What an important job to do.
I love it. I love doing it because in the first place, I get to see so much television that I would never watch on my own, series that some of them I would never watch if they held a gun to my head, but others that I'm really glad I'm doing this because I really like this show.
Right. You get turned on to things in the strangest places, nowadays.
Yes.
Well, you've been so kind to us today. I've got a couple of quick listener questions, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
One of them is we've got a listener talking about they were big fans of Back to School, in which you played Rodney Dangerfield's wife. What was Rodney like?
Rodney was a character. Rodney never stood still, and Rodney wanted to do his act in every scene, and he was hysterically funny, but the poor director was always like, Rodney, that's really funny. That's really funny. I don't think it works here.
Right.
But he was such a sweet man and a really good man, a good person.
That's so awesome to hear. He was always a delight to watch perform, and such a talented comedian. Here's the second question, and I'm sure you get asked about this a lot. Big fan of Carnival. What was working on the show like?
Carnival was probably my favorite. Well, it's up there in the top 3, my favorite job of all times. Wow. It was so on every level. I mean, even to the most basic things like the fact that we were shooting in Santa Clarita, which is only 30 miles from my house. There were so many people in the cast that I only worked usually maybe 3 days a week, maybe 4. And so I could take my kids to school and sometimes even pick them up from school, which is almost unheard of,
Right.
When you're working long hours. And I loved the show itself, the words on the page. I love the actors. I love the character. I mean, how many women of my age at that time get to play that kind of a character? We're usually playing doctors or lawyers or judges or maybe a nurse or,
Amazing.
at least when in the early 2000s. And here comes Ruthie, who's a snake dancer and has psychic visions and has a love affair with a 26-year-old boy. I mean, I loved it.
Right. It's such a commanding performance, and it's one of my favorite parts of the show as well. Well, Adrienne, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the Ratio podcast. What's the best place for our listeners to get in touch with you? Are you on social media?
I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is then reposted on Facebook, but I don't use Facebook and I never look at it. But my Instagram handle, or whatever you call it, is all lowercase, Adrienne_Barbeau. I think that's it. Let me make sure. I have a website, Barbeau, www.abarbeau.com. Let me make sure that's my I always have to look this up because I just take it for granted,
Right.
Let's see, where is it? I'm sure that's it, but well, I could grab my phone and check, but
Well, I'm sure if
they can
they.
find me. They can find me on Instagram, definitely. And I'm really well. My website is www.abarbeau.com. And where is this? Why can't I find it? I'm very excited because I'm just getting ready to start work on a new film that I think the horror genre fans are going to love.
Oh, wow. Do tell. What
I'm
can you
really
tell us
excited
about it?
about it. I can't tell you too much, except it's got a fantastic cast, and uh, we're about 3 weeks away from starting filming, and until they do a press release, that's all I can tell you.
Right on. And do you still get the same excitement that you did when you were getting ready for The Fog for a new project like this?
Oh yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I've worked with the director before, and I love this. I love the screenplay, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we are too, and just want to wish you all the luck on the new film, and just thank you so much for all the wonderful years of your acting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, have a good night, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye bye.
Well, that's about our show for tonight. I want to thank Miss Adrienne Barbeau for coming on the Ratio podcast and being such a fun guest. Make sure you support all that she's involved in. And coming up next on the Ratio podcast, we got our friend Mr. Stephen McDonald, who's a past guest, but a lot's been happening in his world over the intervening years. So we'll have Stephen on to talk about Red Cross and the Melvins. And make sure to follow us on the socials, and you can check out our website at ratiopodcast.com. You can get all our past episodes there. We thank you for listening, and if you're a first-time listener, welcome aboard. Stay switched on, and we'll talk to you soon.